Fred Sharman, one of my recent guests, he asked, like, because this goes with this, is how do you resist like bad faith attacks from bad actors when a community is built on maximizing openness? Because I think you kind of started talking about this in self-censorship, those kind of things that happens. Like, how do you, how do you think about, bad faith kind of stuff within a community?
Right. So first thing I would say is I wouldn't say maximize openness. So I do say high openness, but it should, if you try to maximize openness, again, like, so be very cautious of be very cautious of trying to max anything. Because trying to max any variable has a way, it's like the Goodhart's law kind of thing, right? Like when you try to overdo one particular, you make one number go up, you will compromise some other thing along the way that spoils 100%. The whole thing.
Yep.
And so, yeah, so we want high openness. And when you have high openness, there will be bad actors. And what I have learned from my experience and my study and whatnot is that, again, so scenes have to be careful not to deny the existence of bad actors. So that's unhealthy. But you also don't want to come down too hard on bad actors in a way that is vindictive, because that's also unhealthy. And it's difficult enough to do by yourself or in a small friend group, and the bigger your scene is, the more there will be these like big waves of percolation. Like, again, it's like if somebody did something bad on the internet, right? Like they cut someone in line or whatever in a video, and then they get like 5,000 people all saying, and maybe none of them says anything horrible, but like 5,000 people just kind of, that's not cool. Like, they don't need to hear it 5,000 times. They can hear it like 5 or 6 times. They're like, okay, I got it.
They get it.
Yeah. So even I have a YouTube video where I'm interviewing a guest, and I'm not, that was like one of the first videos I did with someone else. And there's like a dozen comments saying like, oh, you keep interrupting your guest. I'm like, okay. Like, like it does take,
fair point.
Yeah, it's on me. It's on me to learn to metabolize the fact that each new person making that comment thinks that they are the first person to say it, maybe, or they don't notice that there's already 5, 7, 12 other. But yeah, so circling back to bad actors, there's a few different parts to this. One is always center the experience of, well, okay, wait, even before I go there, different scenes and different communities have different cultural norms on how much, not, I don't want to say how much bad actors are tolerated, but like they have different I think usually if someone is revealed to be a bad actor, this person did something bad, we all saw it, that's fucked up. Then you have a kind of a due process. You're like, okay, what you did is bad. We're gonna ask you to not promise not to do that, make some amends, whatever. Like, that's fairly straightforward. If someone does something like criminal, like easy action, if somebody like where it's messy is the gray area where it's not clear what exactly happened. In that domain, I think different scenes and communities have different overlapping norms of what they would want. And even within the same scene, different sections of the scene may sort themselves out by what they think is acceptable and not. And that's okay as well. It's okay for different parts of a scene to, like, you could have one part of the scene being like the most volatile, like, oh, anything goes, you can insult each other all day long, and and that's, I think that's okay. And maybe someone else might think that's not okay. And if they feel that, they can try to change the culture of that part of the scene, or they can cultivate a different section of it, or there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. But yeah, so if we're talking about like someone shows up to a public-ish space and they are being belligerent and mean and nasty to people, if it's possible to get them out, I'm quite pro booting people out of scenes, which some people find that a bit shocking, that I'm quite comfortable like blocking people or like asking people to leave or whatever, because there is this whole worldview which is like we are all misfits and social outcasts and people have bullied us, and therefore we don't want to bully anybody else, and like we're not going to ask people to leave because that's not cool, right? And yeah, so I would say before you ask someone to leave, if it's just like slight social abrasiveness, if they're like being kind of disagreeable in an unpleasant way and people don't like it, like I'll be like, okay, take them aside, talk to them, and be like so DM them if it's online, or if you can bring them aside if it's at a party, like, hey, I gotta tell you something that's kind of awkward and uncomfortable, but let me get it out of the way, okay? The way you're talking, people don't really like that. I don't really like it. I don't think it's cool. And if you keep up with that stuff, like, we're gonna have to ask you to leave, and I would rather not do that. So could you modify your behavior, whatever? That should work a bunch of the time.
Yep.
But if it doesn't work, then yeah, like 2 strikes or whatever, ask them to leave. And the thing is, I've been in multiple like group chats and Facebook groups and whatever where nobody wants to be the bad guy, and
Right.
so when you don't, so this is the kind of ugly thing about community management. If you don't ask the bad guy, the quote unquote bad guys, to leave, and again, like all caveats about whether or not the person is actually bad, blah blah blah, and even just say tedious, like, so like Oscar Wilde said, it's not about whether people are good or bad, it's whether they're charming or tedious. And there's a bit of
I like that.
there's like the gray area there for like bad people who are charming and tolerated, and like that's a separate issue. But like tedious people drive away interesting people. And they don't make an announcement like, I'm leaving because this tedious person is here. They just be like, oh, I guess I'm not gonna, that guy was so annoying, I'm just not gonna show up next time. I got other things, I got like multiple things. They might not even think, oh, I'm gonna stop attending this party or this community or whatever. Because especially the highest value members of your community have other stuff competing for their attention as well. So they'll just kind of casually slide away into the next thing, right? And you won't really notice this happening until one whole layer of like your best people have left, and now the whole place is more tedious and boring, and then it's a cycle it's a race to the bottom, and then the whole thing just kind of dies, and nobody is personally responsible for that failure, right?
Yeah.
Or you could say that the community leader or the and I would say a scene is broader than, so if it's like one Facebook group or a group chat or whatever, like there's one person who started it and that's much more clear cut. That person is responsible. But if it's like a wider Twitter scene or whatever, like it's a bit more nebulous, and anybody claiming to be an authority is kind of, so like I don't think I have asserted myself on Twitter. I don't think I think I could, like, so if some shit really went down,
yeah,
and I felt that community norms need to be reasserted for the good of all, I think I could do it. And I think the fact that I haven't done anything like that so far just adds more credibility to if and when I have to do it. It's like,
okay, yeah,
it's like there's this whole quote about how like when the quiet guy gets angry, that's when you fucked up, right? That kind of thing. It's like yeah, so some people like to play like that hall monitor role of telling everybody there's this thing happening in this scene and it's bad. That's another kind of tricky, challenging thing, like publicly talking about how there's supposedly something bad in the scene, and then everyone starts panicking, like, is it me? Is it that guy? Right? And it's like, the stuff like that is probably better not done on mainstream public channels.
Yeah.
But if I were, so I don't mind saying it like on a podcast like this for people to consider. But like if I tweeted, you should be careful about how you talk about that. Is like, again, you're perpetuating the same the atmosphere of suspicion and uncertainty. So what I do if I feel like some people are being sus is I change the topic and just, so this goes back to the work, right? So it's like, if it's a music scene, make music. If it's whatever tweeting scene, like post some nerd shit about a book or whatever, like just bring the attention back to, and I'm not saying like deny the other thing, but like
right.
So like in relationships, like in like romantic relationships, there's a sense of for every like difficult criticism you give each other, you have to give each other like 5 or 6 compliments or something to feel like it balances out. Because otherwise, if you're just criticizing each other back and forth, even if you're both being completely honest with each other, if it just feels like you're hating on each other every day, like, why are you together? It feels like your relationship is that, right? So and there's another kind of human cycle. Again, like divorces happen more than we would like as a society, because people are not natural at this. So you have to actively take the time to compliment people, celebrate good work, right? There's all these hygiene principles about keeping the scene lively, fun, interesting, a joyful place to be, even if bad shit happens. So it's yeah.